What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to be talking about even more new iOS 26 features and changes. We're going to talk about why Apple might be using Google for a revamped version of Siri, Apple's risky case rebrand, a crazy AirTag story, and much more. And as always, if you want to continue staying in the loop with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and check out the Apple Den Discord server. Okay, so this week was very eventful. It was also very strange and very unusual for multiple different reasons, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But let's start with what happened first in the week, which was iOS 26 Beta 7. So we did get the 7th beta for iOS 26. And I have to say, like I said in my What's New video, the animations for opening and closing up applications has absolutely improved a little bit here with Beta 7. Beta 6 was already really good, but it improved even more with Beta 7, which is great to see. Now, one of the features I did not cover in my What's New video for Beta 7 was something that I didn't really understand fully at first, but now I understand it. So if you go into the Messages application and go up to the filters up in the top right, we now have a brand new filter option in Messages for drafts. So for some reason, I was thinking of drafts as like email. So like you type something, then you'd basically dismiss it and it would show up in drafts, but that is not the case. What drafts is if you go into a text and you start typing, but then you go back and you forget to send it. I'm guilty of that. I do it all the time. Now it will show up as a draft. So I go by filter by drafts. You can see that now it will show, all of the conversations where I typed out something, but I did not send it. And it also now says drafts up there at the top. Now, of course, also in Beta 7, we did get a nice change inside of the battery settings. If we go into battery right here and then into power mode, we now have the option to turn off notifications for adaptive power, which I haven't really seen a big difference using adaptive power, honestly, but it is nice now that you can disable notifications that tell you it's actually working in the background. Now, heading into the wallet application, if you tap on the three dots and then go into your orders right here, this, of course, is where it will show you your orders. And a lot of times it finds these orders in your email and it will populate them in here so you can track any of your shipments from Amazon, Chewy, pretty much anywhere else that, gives you a tracking number in your email. It will show up here. Now, this week, we saw that Amazon actually added support for return codes in Apple Wallet. So this isn't specific to iOS 26, but you can now see your returns easily in Apple Wallet, which is nice. And then with Beta 7, we still did not get the live translation feature, but we did see this was leaked in the code of Beta 6, and it still showed up in Beta 7. So this was found by 9to5Mac, and you can see here, this is a live translation image that was found inside of the code, and for some reason, it's still there. So again, that's very indicative of live translation coming for the AirPods. Maybe it's going to be the next set of AirPods. We don't know. And we'll talk a little bit more about iOS 26 in terms of performance, battery life, and what to expect next in a moment. But we need to also talk about the other software update that came out this week, which was iOS 18.6.2. And it might seem like a small update for those on iOS 26, but it's a pretty important one because you're probably going to have this same patch in the next beta version. So 18.6.2 was just a security patch update. So this wasn't just a regular security patch though. This was one that was being actively exploited out in the wild. And as I talked about in my video, this was a bug that basically was tied to the image IO framework, which is what handles opening and saving images. So basically, hackers figured out a way to sneak malicious code into a photo file so that even just receiving or opening up that image on your device could give them access into your device. Now, this was a highly sophisticated, highly targeted attack, so it most likely did not impact you or anybody you know, but it's still good to go ahead and update to keep your device as secure as possible. And I would not expect that patch to be in the latest iOS 26 build, but it will most likely be there in the next one in Beta 8. But that is not the only weird thing that happened this week, because if you guys remember, 18.6.1 was released last week. So we've had back-to-back weeks with double point updates. That's not super weird. That's pretty unusual, but that's not the crazy part here. Though the weird and kind of crazy part is that the reason Apple released iOS 18.6.1 in the first place was to basically bring the blood glucose monitoring feature back for the Apple Watch. There was a workaround to get around the Massimo patent, and all the infringement and everything like that, so that all the processing, all the calculations, all that is done on the iPhone, not on the watch itself. So that was Apple's workaround, and they got approved to do that. But now Massimo is suing Apple over this workaround. That's right. So Massimo filed a new lawsuit in DC federal court accusing US Customs of unlawfully letting Apple import watches with blood oxygen technology. Because Customs ruled on August 1st that Apple's redesigned approach was allowed, but Massimo says it only learned about it on August 14th when Apple publicly announced the feature's return. And now Massimo is arguing that it still infringes on its patents, and they're asking for a restraining order and injunction to block Customs' ruling, saying that the agency's job is to enforce the ITC's ban, not create loopholes for Apple. But if you take a look at the patents that are kind of in this dispute right now, basically it says that the processing on a user-worn device is the issue. So basically it's saying that all that processing of all the blood oxygen data happening on the watch is the big issue. That's what Massimo has the patent for, not if it's processed on the iPhone. So technically that was Apple's workaround. Technically it's not doing those calculations on the watch, it's doing it on the iPhone. But Massimo is still saying that it's not allowed, even though the patent doesn't really say it's not allowed because you don't wear your iPhone. So we'll see where this goes. I think this is just going to be, a long drug out lawsuit once again, like it has been for a long time. It doesn't seem like Apple is willing to budge. I don't blame Massimo. They're trying to make some money on this. I don't blame them, but it doesn't seem like Apple is budging on this one. Now, also this week, we did see a new driver's license get added. So if you go into the Wallet app and go to driver's license or ID cards, you will see that we have a brand new one here for Montana. So Montana is the latest to be added to the Wallet application. So if you do live in Montana, shout out to you guys. You're lucky that you don't have to pay sales tax on your cars there. But yeah, you can now add your digital driver's license to the Apple Wallet application, which is amazing. You can see all the other ones here that are supported as well, along with Japan's number card. Now, here is something that made some people a little bit upset this week, but we saw Apple increase the price of Apple TV Plus. So Apple TV Plus used to be $9.99 a month. Now it's going to be $12.99 a month. However, the annual price and also the Apple One price has not changed. So for now, this is only for the monthly paying subscribers. Okay, so now we have to talk about Spotify, which if you're not following me on Spotify, I do have a small following over there. It's not my main platform. I mainly use Apple Music. A lot of you guys follow me on Apple Music, so thanks for that. I have the best username on Apple Music, but we do also have a Spotify account right here. Don't use it a ton, but I am on there sometimes in my playlist as well. But anyway, so this week we did see a new Spotify feature, which is basically copying what Apple is doing with the auto mix feature in iOS 26. But Spotify launched this before iOS 26 officially launched, which is savage. And the feature is actually pretty cool. So the feature is called Mix and it is currently in beta, but this will let you blend songs together on playlists. So kind of like what we see again with auto mix. So I personally prefer auto mix since it just happens automatically and you have no real control over it. I think that's kind of the magic of auto mix. But if you are a Spotify user, at least you now have something like auto mix on Spotify. Okay, so now let's talk about something that was kind of controversial this week. So we got a report from Mark Gurman at Bloomberg this week that said that Apple might be using Google's AI models, their Gemini models, for the upcoming Siri revamp. So he said this: Apple recently approached Google to explore building a custom AI model that would serve as the foundation of the new Siri next year. Google has started training a model that could run on Apple's servers, is what the people said. Executives had long viewed Anthropic as the leading candidate for a partnership, but the financial terms led Apple to broaden the search and bring others into the mix. And he does also clarify, because some people at first thought that this was just talking about the extension in Apple Intelligence. Like if you go down here, we have ChatGPT, people are saying that in the future we might have Google Gemini there, but this is separate because in the report he says that these talks are separate from other deals to integrate chatbots into Apple Intelligence. And then he goes on to say Apple is still several weeks away from making a decision on whether to continue using internal models, so Apple's own models for Siri, or move to a partner. And it hasn't yet determined who that partner may be. So yeah, as you can see, this is not going to be just straight up Google Gemini coming to the iPhone and just, calling Google Gemini Siri. This is going to be a custom, if this actually happens, which by the way, let me just say, this is all still a rumor. This is very early talks. We've seen several reports like this in the past that just have not come true. So just know that this is just a rumor. It very well might not happen at all, but we'll have to wait and see. It is at least in the talks right now, so it is possible. But anyway, what I was saying was a lot lot of people were thinking, based on the headlines, which there was a lot of clickbait headlines about this, but everybody was saying in the headlines on Twitter that, Google Gemini is going to be Siri, basically. Apple's just taking Google Gemini and making it Siri, but that's not the case. As you can see from what we just read, it's going to be a custom, build. It's just going to be using Google's models at its core, at its foundation. But of course, it will be a mix as well. And of course, it will be privacy focused as well. Most likely will route through the private cloud compute, just like we see with the ChatGPT integration that we have right now. And honestly, I don't think this is a bad move at all. Like, I actually think this is a very smart move for Apple. If they did this, I think it would actually put them ahead more than if they just stuck to their own foundation models that they have internally. But we'll have to wait and see what happens here. Anyways, let's go back to iOS 26 here for a moment before moving on to some more news from this week. So, as far as performance goes, performance on beta 7 is about the same as beta 6. In my What's New video, I basically told you don't expect a huge jump in performance. It will feel a little bit faster because the animations are faster, but after using it all week, performance is great, but I'm just saying it's not going to be a huge jump over beta 7. I really haven't noticed anything that makes me think I'm using beta 7 over beta 6. I said beta 7 before, but yeah, beta 7 and beta 6, pretty much the same performance on both. Now, as far as battery life goes, I actually did see an improvement with battery life this week, which I did not expect. So beta 6 had pretty good battery life, beta 7 even better battery life. Not iOS 18 level yet, of course, but I have noticed an improvement with battery life. And somebody did also point out in my video that I lost a record low amount of battery during that video, that What's New video, which again is a great sign and kind of proof that battery life is actually improving here with this latest beta. It's also not getting as hot, which is another pro. All right, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So next up is going to be probably the final beta for iOS 26 before the RC. So that's going to be beta 8. So I would expect to see iOS 26 beta 8 next week, the week of the 25th, if not the 25th itself. And then we should be seeing that public beta that same day as well, just like we saw for beta 7. So after beta 8 releases, we're most likely going to skip the first week of September for betas, and then we should see the RC for iOS 26 on the week of September 8th, but it's going to be on the day of the event, after the event. Now here's the other thing. Next week is when we should be seeing the Apple event get officially announced. We could be seeing that as early as Monday the 25th. So we should be seeing the official date for iOS 26 and of course the official date for the iPhone announcement next week. So most likely it's going to be on the 9th. That seems like the most likely chance at this point. So we could be seeing the RC of iOS 26 on the 9th. And then that next week is when we will see it officially launch to the public the week of September 15th, if not September 15th itself. Okay, so now let's move on to some more Apple news. And this week we saw Apple's potential case rebrand. So if you guys remember a couple years ago, we got the fine woven accessories that were pretty much a major flop across the board. Apple's fine woven cases and wallets and all that, they just got completely destroyed. They were, getting stains in them. They just were not durable at all. Pretty much everybody hated fine woven. So it looks like Apple went back to the drawing board and now they're going to launch a new line of cases called the Tech Woven cases. And you can see what these will look like right here. Now keep in mind, these are just kind of knockoff, like dummy models. These are not the official ones from Apple. These are just kind of a representation in China of what the real ones will look like. So, these cases are still going to use fabric instead of real leather. We're not going to probably ever see real leather cases again from Apple, unfortunately. But yeah, you could see these are said to offer enhanced durability and also have a non-slip texture for improved grip. And I can kind of just look at these and tell they are going to grip pretty well. They're also expected to have MagSafe support, of course, and also 2 lanyard holds for convenient and secure carrying. So it looks like Apple is going to be having lanyard holes in them. So I guess people are going to want to wear them across their body, which has been a trend for a while now for cases. So it's going to be interesting to see Apple kind of jump on that. And you can see with the colors for these are going to be black, brown, blue, green, and purple. I'm sure there will be additional colors as well, but that's what we're hearing from this leak from Majin Buu. And honestly, with the expectations literally in the gutter beneath the ground, like everybody's expectations are so low after the whole fine woven fiasco, I think, Tech Woven actually has a chance to be great here. So we'll have to wait and see. Are you somebody who buys first-party cases? Are you looking forward to this? Let me know your thoughts on these tech-woven cases. Now, stop me if you've heard me say this before, but Meta just poached another Apple AI employee to join their super intelligence team. So as you can see here in this report from Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg, it says Meta is hiring another key Apple artificial intelligence executive, even as the social networking company prepares to slow its recruitment. So they're talking about Frank Chu. So he actually led Apple's AI teams, and he had a focus on cloud infrastructure, training, and search. But now he will be joining Meta Superintelligence Labs, or MSL. So once again, he's just following what his fellow executives are doing, and also he's following the money, which I can't blame him. Like, Meta is paying significantly more than anybody else in the industry right now because Zuckerberg is really going crazy with AI and spending money on hiring the best people and poaching pretty much everybody. So, these people are getting millions and millions of dollars, if not tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars at this point to join Meta. So it's crazy. Like, we don't really know where this is going to end, but of course it's not looking good for Apple, but they do have a lot of employees who are still sticking by there. So it's not like Apple is just completely has no employees for AI anymore. That's not how this is working. We're just hearing about the ones that are getting poached, and then we're not even really hearing about the new hires that they're bringing on at the same time either. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but just know that, a lot of their top executives have been getting poached from Meta, which is quite interesting. Now, we also heard about an upcoming Apple Watch that might have Touch ID support. Yes, this was actually found in the code on Macworld. So Macworld actually found this, and they mentioned that this code is explicitly for internal use only. So this kind of suggests that the idea of this Touch ID Apple Watch is still in the prototype stage. But nonetheless, they said this: Apple has been experimenting with some form of biometric authentication on the Apple Watch because code for what clearly refers to the 2026 models of the Apple Watch mentions support for Apple Mesa, which has long been Apple's internal code name for Touch ID. So I don't really know how Apple would implement Touch ID on the Apple Watch. I mean, I guess the button right here on the side, it's big enough on the Apple Watch Ultra at least, or maybe on the digital crown, like on the outside right there. I'm not too sure how they would do that, but it is apparently in the code. So what do you think about that? Do you think you'd actually want Touch ID on your Apple Watch or not? And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, a man in Connecticut had his brand new 2024 Honda moped stolen right out of a train station parking lot. But as always in these stories, he thankfully had an AirTag hidden inside of the bike. So he called the police instantly and gave them the live tracking info that he was able to see from his Find My app. So eventually the Find My signal did stop moving at a local dealership that was called Imported Cars. So police were on the spot and went to check it out at this dealership, and they found that the AirTag signal led them to a dumpster in the back of the dealership lot, and that's where they found the moped's helmet rack tossed inside along with the AirTag itself. But it was just the helmet rack and just the AirTag. There was no moped. So investigators were able to pull up the CCTV footage from the train station, and sure enough, it showed the suspect disassembling the moped piece by piece before taking off with it. And fast forward a week later, detectives finally located the stolen moped in another city, and with the help from the local police in that city, they arrested the 46-year-old suspect who was the same one caught on camera. And while this guy was being booked into jail, police said that he also had PCP on him. That's a drug. So the man was unable to post his $25,000 bond, so he's still sitting in custody waiting for his court date later this month. But of course, without the AirTag, they would have never found this moped, especially since it was disassembled. So shout out to that guy for putting an AirTag in his moped. Again, like I always say, put an AirTag in anything valuable that you own. Anyways, guys, that's it for Apple Weekly this week. I hope you guys did enjoy it as always. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe down below, and I will see you guys very soon.